what she just said is the main point. I just want to kind of touch on what Ameera said, but then just go back to the main point. Um, when I talk to white people, when I was in Michigan, I was in the facility, and 80% of the people there was from different places of the United States. When I actually talk to white people who have not met black people, when they sat down and had at least like an hour conversation with me, 2 hours, they're like, dang, I didn't know this about black people because of our commercial image. When you think about commercial image, what do black people really control or own that can control that commercial image? If you go into our communities, you're not going to see often where girls are going to be like, I'm a hoe and I'm a bitch. Blah, 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 blah. These little girls like, that ain't me. Woo, woo. Like, that's what it is. Unfortunately, because we don't own the record labels, we don't own the main media, we don't own the worldwide media that's portrayed to y'all. Y'all will have that image. But then again, like I said, that's just commercial. I understand where y'all both coming from, and I understand where Ameera is coming from. I think that we have to stop trying to make people relate to our trauma and just do something about it. Let people say what they're going to say. Let people see how they're going to see it. She will never be able to understand and see what we see. She doesn't know the history. They're currently deleting slavery out of the history books in Florida. So they're going to be like, yeah, it stopped over 18, in 18 something. But when you really look at the details of it, slavery, some people were still enslaved in 1963 because their slave owners did not tell them, hey, you're free now. I met a guy in Chicago who told me he would never go back to Mississippi because he had to flee the cotton fields. So when you think about it in that sense, 1963, and we're only in 2025, there's probably more black households affected than what you know, especially because they're hiding that history. But overall, I think that it's a gap in between the black people who are educated and know better, and then the black people who don't, and the ones that we're talking about right now on this podcast that we know needs help. And a lot of them, because I feel like I'm in the middle, I feel like I'm kind of with them because of my financial situation, but my mental is growing to the point where I can understand where everyone else is coming from too. I've never always been this person. Something traumatic happened to me, and now I got to work my way back up, and I ended up being surrounded by a whole bunch of people. But I noticed as I was gaining friends and close friends in those traumatic spaces, when we realized that we really wanted to be friends, we really loved each other, even the men I dated, we eventually, in growing up, had to learn not to take things personal. Like they were trying to say, back to the main point of the video, he was saying that we come with some baggage because of our history. And not all black people do. Some of us were able, some of our parents figured it out before they got to us. But some of us are honestly responsible for breaking those generational curses. Okay, but some of us are honestly responsible for that. And I think that when we're interacting with somebody who's dealing with those traumatic responses and dealing with stuff that we say is cultural, but we know it's toxic and it's really hurting us, I stopped taking it personal. So when they was like, well, I don't want to hear you right now. Okay, that's fine. But I know you'll be back because I got something you need to hear. You know what I'm saying? Even for instance, when me and Casey was in the back, she had ended up telling, like, we was talking. She was like, I'm going to talk to you. I understand why other people might see it different, but I have something on my heart that I need to say, and I'm going to get it off. Little did I know, you don't know, Casey, I didn't tell you, but a couple weeks later, that the advice she gave me helped my relationship. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I said we can't give up on our people. We can't take what we're doing personal, because even though a lot of men were taught to take what I did personal, Casey's a woman. She's not going to she's not going to take it as personal as them, but she can understand their frustration because she has a background in men. But she didn't give up on me. She didn't just like, okay, F you, and you just difficult and you just don't want to listen, and even though that's how I came off, but she still said, I'm going to still say what I say because she's a leader in our community. She said she helped our sororities. So I'm going to just end it with this. I think we need to stop taking things so personal, especially if you know you're the bigger person, if you know you're the most educated out of your friends group, if you know that you're the one that everybody goes to. You have to learn how to give things to God, because yes, it could become overwhelming, but if you give their situation to God, that energy won't sit on your heart so often. So then you'll be able to keep doing God's work that you have planned. And I think that we have to stop judging each other as harshly as we do. And when I say harshly, it's like there's no empathy. And I do think that's an effect from slavery too, because they never had empathy when they had to get us in check. And because that's the way that our grandparents were taught to keep us in check, we kind of we kind of brought that into 2025 when I hear some of the educated people talk about the people who are not where we're at and the people that we're trying to help us to get where they're at. It's like a big disconnection there.
Danielle needs to go. Go ahead.
Hey y'all. So I personally am of the sentiment that people outside of our culture should, if they have questions about it, they should look on Google. Um, I think with Black women being the most educated group in America, it is not our job to teach people who say, "Hey, I've done the research and I know certain things," and then ask simple questions like, "Why don't you leave?" As if this isn't our land. Our grandparents didn't contribute to it, and the reason America has its wealth is because of us. So we don't have to leave anywhere. I think also when there's this stigma or this beautiful stereotype about non-Black people who are um, not native to our land, talking about how they come in one or two generations using government money to get to that place. There's this hardworking trope that's not true. You get access to government grants, government loans, and you get incentivized to be in the space you are. It's similar to white people operating and dominating the affirmative action, DEI, welfare space. Um, and I think it's real audacious for white people to speak in such a way, especially when they're not from America, because there's so many issues going on in your home country that you left for whatever reason and came over here. And even if you didn't know anything about slavery, even if you didn't know anything about Jim Crow, you know that you've been here for one or two generations and you have access to things that people have been here for 5, 6, 7, 8 generations. So if you don't know anything else, you know your lived experience. And that's more than enough to know that there's a system set up against one person and there's a system who helps another person. So I think it's just real. I think us culturally, when I say Black, I'm not talking about skin color, I'm talking about race. Culturally, it is okay to gatekeep. It is okay to keep people outside who have simple minds. Also, I think we start to treat ourselves with the slavery mentality as if we are monolith. White people have trailer trash and they have people who live in Beverly Hills. They have Southern people, they have people who live in the country, they have hills, have eyes people. I think we are all just different. We, even if like with Beyonce and Texas culture, I don't know nothing about it as a Black person who live in Chicago who also lived in the South, so I'm gonna be quiet. Just because we Black, we still different regionally. And I think when they treat us like a monolith and we behave as such, we will have outliers in our culture and in our society like every other culture does. We are gonna speak different like every other culture does. And I think white assimilation doesn't make us better as Black people. Access to their wealth that they created and enslaved people on doesn't make us better Black people because of that fact. Adopting into the education system doesn't make us better Black people. It just means we took a different route. And I think we should stop even, we just, we got to stop treating ourselves like this. We not the
You
same,
said
and that's okay.